Welcome to Shine Your Light, where we humanize the conversation and speak on topics that can expand our minds while sharing our own truth.
All right, you guys. So I am so excited today because we have such an amazing show. I have my friend Nisha here to help me host and speak to these amazing friends of mine. I have Kunal Chandiramani, who is, what I call a 16-year-old genius. He's an entrepreneur. He's the founder of K-Star, Detox, and he keeps on doing all these amazing things, Jacqueline, at only 16 years of age. And we also have Jacqueline here, and she is, mental space psychology. She is one of those people that I couldn't wait to have on the show, Nisha. And it's an honor to have both of you here. Thank you so much to come on today and to spend this time with us, helping us talk about something that's so important. Thank you both.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
It's lovely being here.
So, guys, often we hear about, this topic of bullying. So many people have spoken about it. A lot of people have experienced it. It can be quite a journey, and it can really change people's lives. Sometimes you hear about it when it's too late, and unfortunately, when a situation happens and you don't deal with it, then the repercussions of that situation can be so much worse than it would have to be. So today, Nisha and I decided that let's just humanize this topic. Let's talk about it. Let's share an experience and some stories. And I invited Jacqueline because Jacqueline could give us tips on how, what else could we do? How else could we approach it? Now, I know we all have our own ways of doing things, and that's what I love about when we do these conversations, because it allows us all to share what works for us, what doesn't work, learn from each other, share. And I know on Facebook we have people out there, so thank you all for coming and checking in. And I hope you can ask us questions and share your suggestions, because we can all learn from each other. That's the beautiful thing about this, right? So Nisha, let's start with you real quick. Share your two bits on the topic, and then we get started with Kunal and Jacqueline.
Sure. So I was really happy when you decided to bring this topic up, and we've been speaking on it for a while. I feel in bullying, if you're having conversations, whether it's with children or even, if you're looking at it in the modern day workplace, it's a very prevalent topic. And one key takeaway for me that I've been having in conversations especially is this, that people end up suffering in silence.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things I feel we need to address. That what can we do so that we can make conversations around bullying ones that we can have with people around us, and so that we're not having to bear the burden on our own, and there might be another viewpoint or a perspective that could actually help you to address the situation better. So one core philosophy for me is don't go through it alone, or you are not alone. It's always a good idea to even if you can't directly, maybe you're in a position where you can't solve the problem, speak to someone who you feel can be a resource to you in helping you deal with it. So that was an opener for me on this topic, especially.
I love what you said, and I think this is going to be, this is where we start bringing the juice in the topic. But first, I want to share with everyone, some of Kunal's experiences. Now, Kunal, before I pass the mic over to you, I just want to introduce some of the things about you, if it's okay with your permission. Or should I let you say it? There is.
I'd love to hear it from you.
Okay, so there's everyone's gifted with the beautiful thing about mankind is each person is born with his own gifts, right, Jacqueline? Everyone is born with this beautiful gift, and everyone's traits are different and special. Kunal is one of those kids that took a test. Kunal, tell us about that test of yours, and tell everyone about that.
Which one? I need some more context here.
More context. Okay, so you took a test that tests IQ. Isn't that correct?
It's one of the many things, but ideally, it's very relative. It's something very relative here, but overall, uh, more than tests, it comes down to the idea of looking through everything as one in terms of tests. There's so many different tests that come through, but but like you clearly put it forward about the human element behind all of it, and I think that's the one more prominent. I've given a lot of tests, so yeah.
So what I was talking about is that, he's gifted with what we call, genius, right? And that is something which is so beautiful. And
I'm trying to be modest. Please help me here.
you are honest, right? But the beautiful thing about that is that, when at a young age, when you do these kind of, tests, and then you are tested with higher IQ, it's a good thing, right? And because of that, Kunal has had so many opportunities, and we've seen him do so many amazing things. But there's also been a different side to this. And when he shared some of his experiences, it really touched a bone for me. It made me realize that, what, there's always another side. But if we talk about that side, then we can all learn from it, and we can all understand how could we approach it better. So Kunal, in school, tell us a little about your schooling days.
So, my schooling days, so I schooled regularly till grade 10, that is K-12 till 10. And overall, my schooling was pretty conventional. I grew up in a small city in India called Bhopal, and very conventional, quite a few challenges. I remember going through bullying at multiple instances, but overall it was a not so pleasant experience. But then everything is as pleasant as it is not so pleasant. But yeah, more on those lines.
So let's talk about your experiences with bullying, because you did deal with a few incidents, right? Can you
Yeah.
share with us one? There were a couple of stories you've told me, and is there any you're comfortable talking about today? Just an experience about the bullying, and how were you feeling when it happened? What was your first reaction? How did you cope with it? You want to share some of that?
100%. So that's one of the things, one of the conscious decisions I made, like earlier when we were discussing on the same about consciously talking about this, because the overall idea of anyone else who might be facing it and maybe providing them with the slightest bit of guidance or the slightest bit of light, like you like to put it, in an instance where you feel very alone, is probably more valuable than anything else. And I think that's really where it needs to be conscious to go ahead and talk more about it. So one of the earlier instances was I gave my first TED talk when in school. I gave my first TED talk when I was 14. And when I came back from my first TEDx, and there was this not so pleasant experience I had. It's probably one of the worst experiences experiences I've had, and it's something that in a lot of ways affected me, in a lot of ways grew me, in a lot of ways was one of the most brutal experiences of bullying I ever went through. So it was this, when I came back from the event, I came back to school. I remember being greeted in my class a few hours into the day with a box on my face and a lot of teasing, a lot of beating up, and so bullying in the physical. So when we talk about bullying these days, we look at a figurative element as much as the literal element, and a mental element as much as a physical element, and each of them is as important. So in that context, it was as physically as any, and being punched physically in the face was something that left a mark with me. Thankfully, the mark wasn't physical, but more on those lines. And I think that was probably my most brutal experience with bullying. It was pretty head on. There was a lot of jealousy build up. I truly don't blame the people involved there. There's a lot that comes in psychology through the surroundings. But yeah, it was probably the most brutal physical bullying I went through. It was a lot of.
Let's stop for a second. Just let's establish a few things. You were young. Some of the stuff you've done is remarkable. I remember him having built a robot or something really. Wasn't it a robot you built at like 5 or 6? It was unreal, the stuff that you've done. And so for no reason of your own, you go to school and they'd pick on you and you'd end up getting hit, you got beat in this particular situation. It's not like you did something, right? It's just that maybe because you were smarter and it gave someone a complex, and that's, you ended up getting beat. Is that correct? That's what you experienced, isn't it?
100%. That was probably my first idea of it. But as and when I established base and understood it, there was, so one of the most beautiful part about being a human being is the idea of empathy. And very often when we feel we are not wrong, we end up assuming that the other person's wrong. And that's where, so this was a mark that stayed with me for years. It's truly unresolved. It was this idea that I did something I really enjoy doing. I came back from delivering a talk at one of the most reputed stages in the country and being greeted in a way I wouldn't want to be greeted in. But the idea was that that there was a lot of jealousy built up. And it would be below me to put it forward that it was just some people for no reason coming ahead and hitting. So there was a lot of jealousy built up, and that's where circumstances influence bullying, and very often are the ones that create elements like bullying, the circumstances that the bully faces.
So I'm going to bring this now to Jacqueline. So Jacqueline, in this situation, right? He, as a young kid, obviously Kunal's got his head on his shoulders. He's gone around in India. He speaks on stage, and so he's been able to successfully overcome the situation and actually become really successful as a result of that, which is something I mean we all are so happy and proud of, But for a second, just for the everyday person who maybe young kids or people at work, when they are dealing with a situation where it's uncomfortable, they don't know really what they did, but they may be getting picked on. Bringing it back, I mean, it's normal for them to feel bad, feel scared, right? And of course, you've had the time now, Kunal, at your age, to reflect back and have the empathy and position it in a way that you can be bigger about it. But for an individual who's experiencing it, Jacqueline, can you tell us a little about that as the person who's receiving it as a kid, or what is some natural responses, right? Initially, like when this happens, what are some natural reactions that people go through?
The natural reaction, if children are bullied, is that they go to in a part of the victim, because this also the parents at school, they treat the kid who was bullied as a victim, and then their self-esteem is getting lower and lower, because then they start to see themselves as a victim. And if you are a victim, you can't do anything. So, but they better work on the self-esteem. They have to help those children to feel better about themselves.
Right.
And sometimes I work with children in my practice, and when I told them that the base problem of the victim, of the bully and the bullied, that's most times the same. They both have a small self-esteem, a small self-image, and the one who's the bullier, they pretend to be big, and they start to be violent because they're afraid themselves. But the ones who get bullied, they are drawing back. So that's the only difference between them. In the base, they're the same. They're both afraid, or they don't show their. They don't have enough self-esteem. So that's the base problem.
I love what you're saying, Jacqueline. I'll just summarize that a bit so that everyone can understand what you just said as well. So what I heard you say is that even though there's two people here, there's the person who's getting bullied and the person who's bullying, and it's the amazing experience is that even though the person who's bullying feels like he's in a position of power, in reality he's also, or he or she is also still feeling that, low self-esteem,
Right.
and they're not as big as they feel they are.
Yeah.
And in a sense, there is that feeling of, you may be thinking you're at a point of control, but it's not necessarily that you are.
Yeah. Can I share the screen I have made for it?
Sure. I think we can have. So while we get, I think my team is going to work on sharing the screen real quick. Can you try to share your screen while we?
Do you see it? Can you see it now?
We can't.
We
Can you
can.
walk
I
us?
think.
Can you talk us through it?
So on the screen, you see a person who has a negative self-image,
Okay.
and the bully and the bullied both have a negative self-image and no self-esteem. But the bully outwardly acts as big and powerful.
Hmm.
And the one who is bullied as a victim, that person withdraws and makes themselves small. They don't want other people to see them because they are afraid.
So what I'm hearing is the bully, the person who's getting bullied sees the bully in front of him as big.
Yeah,
Correct?
like this. You see this picture?
So unfortunately, we cannot see your screen right now. So you're going to have to talk us through it. But from what I understood,
Can-
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Wait. Oh. And now? You can see it now?
So I think the tech team, Somya, is working on that from her side. So while she does that, can you talk us through the image without us seeing the image? Because I know what you're saying kind of, it does ring. Nisha, do you want to reiterate what you heard?
Yeah, sure. So I think what I also gathered from what Jacqueline was saying is that it's the same core place of fear. It's just that in the bully, it comes as out as a big and strong personality. And and it's the same fear structure in the bullied, but the bullied comes from a victim place where they're smaller and they feel more powerless in that situation. But what she's saying is that the core of it is still fear. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Jacqueline, was that what you were attempting to share with us? Team,
Okay,
we can see ourselves in actually
Yeah.
a bit of a.
So
I think
On the to the outside world, the bully acts like if he's big and strong, or a girl, and they're violent. But the one who is bullied, they withdraw. But in their mind, there's a big difference, because in the mind of the bullied, they see the bulliers very big in front of them. They make the image bigger than the person himself, and that's what makes them afraid. That's why they're so afraid. And when people tell them, well, just neglect them, don't say anything to them, just pretend you're okay. Well, they can't, because the fear is there because of that big image just in front of them.
Right.
So in the unconscious mind, they see the whole day that bullier in front of them. So can you think about that, Kunal? If you think back of the period you were bullied, and you think of those people who did that, if you think about them, where is their image in your mind around you? Where do they show up?
I think the whole idea, like, so primarily when I went through the experience, there was a whole element of, so as a society, we've come to glorify victimization. We victimize people and we glorify the fact that people are victims. So, say, for example, on a news channel, when someone's gone through a traumatic experience, he's displayed as a victim, and being a victim gets glorified. And the whole idea changes there about saying, like, I love the way you put it about the victim not being the only one who is the victim, but the person who's on the other side also being deserving the same level of empathy to be the victim there.
So Kunal,
So
I love what you're saying, and I think it's in line with what Jackie's saying. So she's trying to demonstrate to you, when someone has experienced bullying, when you think back of the bully, she's asking, and Jacqueline, see if I'm saying this correctly, if I heard you right, is when you think of the face of, say, one particular situation, can you tell us where you see him or her, the image? If you were to think of that image, where would you see them?
So Kunal, close your eyes for this one. It might help. Just close your eyes and just picture it for a second. And then see how big that image is, how near is it, how far, and where it's showing up for you.
I did this exercise with Jacqueline that day. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful. You want to try?
let me try in that context. Okay.
So try to have a look in your mind's eye. Try to see the face of the person, say, who bullied you in one situation. And where does it show up?
Completely open, thinking out loud. I really can't seem to even figure out. So it's I'm never really given this so much thought, but I can't really picture the person as much. There was a huge element of me for a huge amount of time, which had so much rage against that. But I really can't picture the person anywhere outside the circumstance, and then an empathetic side, and then that's about it. Wipes it off. I really can't picture the person.
So Kunal, sorry, I'm not interrupting you. I'm kind of seeing what you're saying, and if I'm getting you right, you don't see them close here in your mind's eye. You see them far away, where you can barely see them now. Is that correct?
I don't see them. I did at a point of time, and I had rage. When I'd made peace with it, I don't see them anymore. There was a point it was associated to nightmares. It was associated to a lot of things, and it had left a deep impact. But
I think that's what Jacqueline is talking about, right? Jacqueline, you want to take over from here?
That was when rage had the lead. It takes a perspective change then. Yeah, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in your mind, it changed, and but with most people, it doesn't change. So they their whole life they keep seeing the one who bullied them just in their mind, in front of them, and very close. And that's why people still are afraid of other people when they were bullied when they're a small kid.
Mm.
It can get happen that they are very unsure in their adult life because the image of the bullier or more bulliers is still in their mind. And if you change that image, then they feel more sure about themselves and not afraid anymore.
That's brilliant.
So I have a question actually, specifically, so that we can actually add to this topic and add some value, Rajiv. So you mentioned such a good point about seeing the image really big and close for a lot of people. And I work with kids as well, so in the past, so I know when they describe the images, it's usually much bigger in life for them too. So is there a tip, Jacqueline, that you can give to listeners on how they can work with this image? And maybe if, people who are listening in have that experience, do you have any tip or suggestion on what they can do about this, or how they can go about maybe making that image a bit smaller or a bit faded, not so loud in their mind?
Yes, first of all, you have to be aware of it. So if people are watching now or who are bullied, then they can think about that person and become aware of where do they see that person, that image of that person somewhere around them. so my experience is that most people have those images very close to them and high, always high, because they feel smaller than other people. That's why they're not they don't have a self-esteem.
Right. In fact,
So if
Finish.
so if you see the image of a bullier just in front of you, you can imagine that you put that image further away, like 5 meters or more. And with children, most times it's easier to do. With adults, sometimes you need more techniques to help them with it, because then they experience a lot of things already. But if you have children, or you work with children and they have that problem, then you can just tell them, well, let's put that person 5 meters away. And then what they can do is look at the person and make him smaller, very small.
right.
And then you're going to change their hair. So I tell children, well, let's give that person green hair. Or when it's a boy, I tell them, well, let his hair grow until the ground. So or make his nose very long, like Pinocchio. All crazy things. And when the child starts to laugh, then most times the fear is gone.
I love that. I love that. So in essence, what I'm hearing you say is you let their imagination start to paint a picture, and you make it less scary, is what I'm hearing you say. So by the discussions you said, by giving him a long nose, I see Eliza in the background there laughing, and she's, but it's true, right? So there's a question from a listener, and I throw it back to all of you, because I think you've answered this, but I'll throw it out anyway. How do you deal with the trauma of bullying? And I love the fact that you've answered that is how we position the actual person, whether they're in front of us or we start to push them away. Jacqueline, I love that. In fact, we have to put that in one of our takeaways, right, Nisha?
Yes.
Draw the picture.
Yeah, I know. I want to add to that. The reasoning behind why that works is your system, and that's the brilliant part about this technique, is it can't be afraid and laugh at the same time. Okay. And usually by the time you get laughing, so you can either have humor or fear. Having both those emotions simultaneously doesn't work in your system. So if you can take that and make it funny, then it switches. The funny becomes the more dominant one. So that's actually a beautiful takeaway for people. But what Jacqueline's saying is right, is it's meant more for kids. Coming back to the question, I'll take one small go at it, is if you're using the word trauma of bullying, that in and of itself implies that there is a significant emotional component to it. So if you are someone who has experienced or traumatic experience and memories of bullying that, with simpler techniques, you're not able to kind of recover from that space, then my number one thing I would say is that everybody deserves to be free and live from a happy place. So if you need some extra support or go on a journey with someone to help you process some of those feelings, I can assure you, I've worked with kids, I've worked with adults, and I've worked with even older adults, sometimes in their 50s and their 60s. I can assure you, dealing with the issue will make you feel so liberated that then you can actually go forward to live a life with a much higher quality of life. So it's a brilliant question. I would say definitely do take some time to consider addressing it.
Nisha, I want to acknowledge that for a second. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, because the key word that you spoke about here is trauma. And the minute that word pops up, and if you do feel that that's needed, then it's important to meet with someone, a medical professional, who can then hear you out. I know Jacqueline also does work in this element with the positioning It's amazing stuff. Jacqueline, I just love what you do. Nisha, you absolutely bang on with when it reaches a stage where it is affecting your day-to-day life, then yes, absolutely, you can consult with a professional. It's definitely a solution. But I want to just bring us zoom back real quick, because we also have some other guests who have visited today. We're going to have a group discussion. But so some tips. What tips can we give? So one was the way we imagined them and repositioning this. But is there some immediate steps that we can take, guys, that could help maybe a situation presently in the moment for us building our mindset?
Yeah, so one simple one that I have, this is actually bringing back your logical mind into the picture. So I used to work with kids, and I'll share a small anecdote over here. So I had a kid come up to me and said, 7-year-old, basically saying that, I got called a mouse today in class.
Okay.
So because she had a tinier frame, so they kept calling her mouse. And so I asked her, okay, where's your tail? Where are your ears? Are you squeaking or are you speaking to me? So, okay, the frame of reference and the point is basically this. Remember, when a bully is saying something to you, in that moment, it's very easy to go and say that, oh my God, everything this person's saying is true. It's instinct, it can happen. But if you take a moment after that and step back and realize, is this true? Is it relevant and important? And is this mine or theirs? These are my 3 questions for anyone experiencing bullying. Is it really true? What the person's saying, is it theirs or is it mine? So say, for example, this kid who has an issue. Maybe they're frustrated or they have some kind of complex and they're saying, oh, you're a mouse. So in a simpler way, when I explained it to a kid, I'm like, is it really true? Do you need to feel that bad? Because did you really turn into a mouse? Because tomorrow if I said, oh, ABC, you're a cat, will you all of a sudden grow a tail and start mewing? So it's that kind of reasoning. You have to bring your logical mind into the picture. So Kunal, actually your example, because it had a physical component to it, but if there's a verbal component to it, a lot of the times this happens to adults or even kids who grow up a bit older. They can receive bullying in the format of very nasty words. And I know in the moment they can seem harsh and you can get affected by it. But if you take a step back and really ask yourself, is this real? Is it really what this person's saying, maybe about for example, my IQ, how intelligent I am, how capable I am? Is it really true? Or is it their projection on me? The second you start to bring your thinking brain into the picture and really break that down, then you're able to start doing this thing of creating a distance. That, no, you know what? This belongs to that person. It doesn't belong.
Nisha, because you've given us a lot of nuggets there, right?
I'm repeating that to Chris.
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna let you do the third part, but let me quickly just summarize first 2 so that we're all on the same page, right? So I like, and I'll simplify it, okay? Because I know that yes, I have to dumb it down for myself, right? So I'll say, number 1, identify, try to distance yourself and understand whose truth is this? Is that person's perception? So is it really true? Or is it real? Now, this can even apply for someone experiencing this at work. Is someone else projecting their reality or their truth onto me and then making me feel bad about it? So did I get that right? Did I summarize that properly? Yeah? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
And then your last point.
So I want to add something here. So say like today with Detox and K-Star and everything that we work with, say, 50 to 100 people working with us directly as interns, as employees. And if we add on volunteers, it crosses 500. And with the amount of people that work with us and all the interns, all the employees that work with us directly, I think that's been one of the most important takes, because today as a civilization, with capitalism growing in the past century, it's taken a very different shift, and that's where culture comes in. And it's so important to have it influenced by your own lives. Like a founder's life becomes a huge inspiration for the company. And for everything that it goes into and every action that it commits to. and all the values that it does, because a company that doesn't have values is a company that's going to just be creating a product, and that's the cheapest company possible. Like there was this lovely quote by Henry Ford that a company that makes a lot of money and just makes a lot of money is a poor company. And that's the relevance of values, and that's why culture is so important. And all these things, very often, for anyone who's listening to this, maybe in an early stage of a venture they're working on, or working on anything that's probably involving more than 3 people, it's very important to go ahead, take the paper, list down what values you're looking for in the culture. Because if you have strong values in the culture, as people caring for each other, and people, like, one of the core values we built was caring for people not because you work with them, caring for people not because they work for you, caring for someone not because you work for him, but caring for people because they're human beings. And that is the greatest connect, because you are a human being, I am a human being, and every single person out of the 8 billion listed down are human beings, and just caring
So
for them genuinely,
I'm gonna,
because they are
on the
human
interest of
beings.
time, because I'm going to try to balance this, because I want to get Eliza and Jacqueline on this as well. And but I love what you threw in there, and I was trying to, you said so much, and again, I'm just going to summarize it real quick, but because we also spoke about bullying at work, and I love your contribution. What you just said, if I heard you correctly, is that a organization's values, especially when you humanize the organization, and when you can bring it down to where there's empathy and compassion at work, then having the right set of values at work can create a more conducive space for mental well-being, so that you can prevent situations like bullying. And this is what I heard you say in its in your beautiful way, right? Would that be a fair way to summarize it?
Rajiv, so the biggest thing is here, like, say, I personally went through an experience and went through multiple experiences. And what those multiple experiences do for you is they influence the way you look at things. So today with Detox, when we worked with over 500 volunteers, it was my first not-for-profit, my first CSR. And when we work with all these people, we want to make sure that they care for each other as much as they care for the person they're reporting to. And it all comes down from personal experiences, because people love storytelling and just relating it to that.
Love it. So I take, so Nisha, you took your first point of, is it real? We add Kunal's point of, in organizations, is the value conducive? Are the values conducive, the environment conducive to create a space of loving care? Jacqueline, do you want to add a tip before we open up to the rest of the panelists?
That if children or adults realize that they have the same problem, the victim and the bullier, then sometimes that makes it easier for people. Then they can sometimes unconscious, the image of the bully is getting smaller when they know, oh, he's also afraid of something. Then they see those people in a different way. And that also will help them to get more self-confidence themselves. And that's the solution, I think, for everyone who's bullied or feels as a victim. Work on yourself. That's the only thing that will help, because if you want to change others, it doesn't help you, because then you see other people who are bullying and do bad things to you. And if you go to another school or to another job, then you find out that it starts over and over again, just as long until you change it within yourself.
I love that. So I thank you. That's really important. I really was waiting for one of you to say that. I mean, so it's absolutely true. Imperatively is to go within and to work on yourself, because a lot of times when we go within and we start to work on, I don't want to use the word trauma, but on the situations, then it starts to, correct. It starts to move. Otherwise, it's a cycle repeating over and over.
Right. And also people have to realize that most of those things you can change themselves until except for Kunal, of course, but I think he's an exception. But
Right.
most people try to change themselves, and then they start trying it on a behavior level. But you have to go more deeply to change it, and you really need a good therapist to do that.
I love what you're saying. And so if we look at some of the key takeaways that we spoke about today, you guys spoke about, is it real? And I'm reading from the bottom up because I know that, Nisha started with that, right? So absolutely. I love that. And I love, Jacqueline, your point of imagine and reposition. Where do they show up, and where, can we move them, away from that big space they take in front of us. And I added a few things earlier, and I just thought I'll reiterate them because I know that, Nisha, this is stuff that most people do know, but I think we just voiced it anyway. Is it's important and imperative to love yourself, guys. And again, Jacqueline, you said it right when you said you have to go within and you have to work on yourself. And I can't stress it enough. A lot of times when we are, living our life, our day to day, it's so easy to try to use all our energy outside. And I know Jacqueline is here as well, and Eliza, and then both of you will see that, a lot of us are so confident going out of ourselves and loving everyone, and then we don't keep enough for ourselves, and then it we don't have that energy. So it's important to remember, you have to value and love yourself. Also, set boundaries, guys. Step up, be confident, and set boundaries. So what is the boundaries that are acceptable to you. When someone crosses the boundaries, that, okay, wait a second, now it's not something that I'm cool with, and then obviously last of all that I've put in the middle there is speak up. Do speak up, because Nisha, you said it right when you first started, right? In silence, when you sit in silence, no one hears the pain. Yeah, it's about going out there and speaking up and just saying, listen, guys, this is not cool, right? Any additions to this that you guys want to add that we've missed?
Rajiv, there's something I want to add. It might be slightly overwhelming, but hearing this, I feel it's kind of necessary. And
Okay.
it's the whole element because I was just going through a couple of questions on Facebook and just seeing the relevance of this whole idea. That when you're going through bullying, when you're going through an experience, it's very difficult to develop empathy in that situation. Because
Right.
when you're in that situation, you're overwhelmed with so many feelings that empathy doesn't really become one of them. And realizing that when you've done something which others might have not done, we're programmed in a way for them to feel jealous. And jealousy is a human feeling, just like happiness or sadness. And realizing that they feel jealousy, and it's okay. It's okay for them to feel jealousy. Might, if they express it in a different way, it's okay. You can stay away from them. But yeah, so realizing that you're not wrong, it's because you're doing something that they aren't doing, and that's what is making them jealous and leading to bullying. So realizing you're not wrong. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say, Kunal, is in line with what Jacqueline was saying. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to cut you. I'm just trying to be conscious about the time, because we also have Eliza. We want to get her on here, and we're going to have to say bye to our Facebook audience as well in a couple of seconds. But you actually re-emphasized what Jacqueline was saying earlier as well, is that in order to get to that situation where you can practice empathy and be compassionate to the bully, you need to also go within and start to work on yourself. And that's why I think it's so vital what Jacqueline was talking about, the repositioning of the pain point and how it looks. Guys, thank you so much. I'm going to now invite Eliza to join us. I know we have a few people who are going to come on screen. Eliza, how are you doing? So before we get, so Eliza, we want you to say one quick point to us, and then we say bye to our Facebook audience, and then we continue taking this conversation on bullying.
From my take, I think self-value is very important, because when you are being bullied, you are a victim, you become passive, and when you change your attitude and you say that I have value, I don't deserve this, that makes you bigger than the other person who is trying to bully you, and the realization of you have the value.
That's
yes. No
that's
matter
really nice. So what you're saying in essence is reflect your own value. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes. And you're
Beautiful.
not in a passive position anymore, because I think people who are being bullied, they became victim and they became very passive and they're so afraid. So once you know that, well, why am I being bullied? For example, that people who bully other people, they try to make you feel like you are not capable to do certain things.
Right.
You actually have the capability of doing that. So the confidence will come back when you tell yourself, I have what I can do, you know. So why am I being bullied? Why do I have to be a passive and a victim?
I love what you said, and in fact, I'm gonna say that let's take this conversation further. But before we go further, I quickly want to say thank you to everyone on Facebook who has been with us today for the wonderful questions. You know, I know there's a lot of questions out there. There's a lot of ways that a lot of you have been dealing with this. I'm sure you have your stories. Please share it with us. I will be happy to share the information of Jacqueline, Nisha, Lisa, everyone on the screen, Kunal, myself, if you need some help or you want to take this discussion further. But the most powerful message that we all can keep on sharing, I guess, is when we have experiences, you know, experiences we can learn from. And it's the more we speak about these topics, the more we can actually share and learn from each other and find ways to overcome these situations. Not everybody has all the answers. Of course, there is professionals out there who will help you when you need it, but there's also conversations that can take place. So if all of us do our little small bit to learn from each other and get the conversations going, I'm sure there'll be the right answers to some of the questions. So thank you so much for being with us. And we say bye to all our Facebook audience tonight, and then we can continue in a second. So thank you all for being with us.
Bye, Facebook.
Thank
Excellent.
you for having me.